Long before ambition divided them, Leya and Adanna were only children. Their friendship began when 7-year-old Leya entered the gardens of the wealthy Merrick estate while delivering vegetables from her parents' farm. Leya followed a blue butterfly through the garden until it landed on Lady Samira's treasured white rose. Adanna found the barefoot farmer's daughter admiring the flower and warned her that it was worth more than everything Leya's family owned. Leya was not intimidated. She calmly explained that the rose smelled just like the wildflowers growing beside her village river. Curious about a place beyond her luxurious estate, Adanna demanded that Leya take her there. Before sunset, the two girls were laughing and playing in the shallow river. Adanna's expensive yellow dress became covered in mud, and purple flowers tangled in her carefully arranged braids. For the first time, she felt completely free. Leya worried that Lady Samira would punish her for ruining Adanna's clothes. But Adanna confidently took her hand and promised that nobody would harm Leya while she was beside her. It was the first promise binding their lives together. From that day forward, the girls became inseparable. They climbed mango trees, swam in the river, and escaped Adanna's lessons whenever they could. Beneath the flowering jacaranda tree, they built tiny palaces from mud and crowned themselves with grass. Adanna defended Leya whenever her wealthy brothers mocked her worn clothing. Leya confronted village children who called Adanna proud and spoiled. Despite belonging to different worlds, each girl became the sister the other had never known. Lady Samira strongly disapproved of their friendship. She reminded Adanna that a daughter of House Merrick should associate with noble families, not poor farmers. But Adanna refused to abandon Leya and insisted that their friendship would last forever. Leya's mother, Mariam, feared that promise. She warned her daughter that powerful people could love someone deeply until that person stood between them and something they desperately wanted. Leya dismissed the warning because she trusted Adanna completely. The years passed, and the girls grew into beautiful young women. Adanna became elegant, confident, and accustomed to admiration. Leya remained humble and kind, attracting attention without ever seeking it. Their dreams, however, were very different. Leya wanted a peaceful home, a loving husband, and enough land for her parents to live comfortably. Adanna dreamed of marrying Prince Jaffar, entering the royal palace and becoming Queen of Asmar. Beneath their jacaranda tree, Leya placed a crown of purple flowers upon Adanna's head and promised to support her dream. That evening, royal horns announced the coming feast of the Golden Moon, where Prince Jaffar would begin searching for his future bride. Adanna believed the crown was finally within reach. Neither woman knew that the feast would test every promise they had ever made. The morning after the royal announcement, the Merrick estate transformed completely. Dressmakers arrived with rolls of silk, jewelers displayed precious ornaments, and musicians filled the courtyard, while Adanna prepared for the opportunity she had dreamed about since childhood. Under Lady Samira's strict supervision, Adanna practiced walking with a book balanced upon her head. Her mother repeatedly corrected her posture, reminding her that she was preparing to meet a prince, not an ordinary visitor. Leya tried to hide her amusement, but Lady Samira noticed. She ordered the young woman to make herself useful by adjusting Adanna's blue gown. Once Leya had left, Lady Samira declared that a farmer's daughter had no place at a royal bride selection feast. Adanna immediately refused to attend without her best friend. She explained that servants could manage her clothes, but only Leya truly understood her. Lady Samira reluctantly agreed, warning that Leya must remain behind Adanna and remember her position. That evening, Adanna found Leya quietly sewing golden beads onto her gown. Leya admitted that Lady Samira's rejection had made her consider remaining at home. She could help Adanna prepare without entering a palace where she was clearly unwanted. Adanna took Leya's hands and reminded her of their promise beneath the jacaranda tree. She wanted the one person who always told her the truth standing beside her when she met Prince Jaffar. Unable to disappoint her friend, Leya agreed to attend. During the following days, Leya helped Adanna study royal customs, practice formal greetings, and select the perfect jewelry. Adanna spoke about Jaffar as if they were already in love, although everything she knew about him had come from stories and public appearances. Lady Samira invited several noblewomen to join the preparations, including Noura, the daughter of a respected general, and Salima, whose father controlled Asmar's largest gold mines. They constantly praised Adanna, but became cold whenever Leya entered the room. While Leya arranged flowers in Adanna's hair, Salima mocked her for watching a friend prepare for a life she could never possess. Leya calmly answered that she was happy for Adanna, but Salima remarked that every queen needed someone poor enough to carry her dresses. Adanna immediately ordered Salima to leave the estate. When Leya said she did not need defending, Adanna insisted that nobody would disrespect her closest friend. For one reassuring moment, their childhood bond appeared stronger than wealth, prejudice, or ambition. That night, Mariam found Leya preparing the simple blue dress she had sewn for the feast. She warned that no royal gathering was ever harmless. Leya laughed at the idea of Prince Jaffar noticing her, but Mariam quietly replied that royal favor did not wait for permission. On the morning of the feast, Adanna emerged in a magnificent golden gown decorated with tiny crystals. Leya followed in her modest blue dress, wearing only the wooden necklace Beko had given her. As they entered the carriage together, Adanna believed the crown was already waiting. The royal palace glittered beneath hundreds of golden lamps as decorated carriages arrived from every region of Asmar. Adanna stepped into the courtyard with the confidence of a future queen, while Leya followed quietly, carrying her friend's small silk purse. Noblewomen gathered beneath the flowering trees, examining one another like rivals entering a battle. Noura praised Adanna's appearance, then looked dismissively at Leya and said she had not known companions were permitted. Adanna firmly answered, "Leya is my guest." Royal trumpets silenced the courtyard. King Idris entered beside Queen Zafira, followed by Prince Jaffar in a dark blue robe lined with gold. Adanna's breath caught when she saw him, and Leya playfully reminded her not to forget how to breathe. The feast began with formal presentations. Daughters of powerful families approached the royal platform one after another. Some sang, others danced, and several offered expensive gifts, each hoping to prove that she deserved the prince and Asmar's future crown. When Adanna's name was announced, she walked forward with perfect grace. The herald introduced her as the daughter of Lord Merrick, keeper of the Eastern Estates. Queen Zafira regarded her with approval, while Prince Jaffar welcomed her with a courteous smile. Adanna performed the traditional dance she had rehearsed for weeks. Every movement was elegant and controlled, earning loud applause from the royal court. She returned to Leya, glowing with confidence, and whispered, "He watched me the entire time. This night belongs to me." 4 was slipping farther away. Lady Samira continued feeding her pain. She warned that once Leya entered the palace, everyone would forget the woman who had brought her there. Noura added that Leya's innocence might have been an act all along. Adanna tried to resist their words. Leya was still the girl who had shared roasted maize with her and defended her in the village. But jealousy had already entered Adanna's heart. Growing stronger each day, Jaffar and Leya became closer. As the 40 days passed, Jaffar rode with Leya through farming villages and listened to her concerns about broken wells and hungry families. Leya saw a prince willing to learn, while Jaffar saw the compassion and wisdom Asmar needed in a future queen. On the 30th day, he took her to a hill overlooking the kingdom. Jaffar confessed that most people praised him only because of his title. Leya was the first person brave enough to tell him the truth. Leya admitted that she no longer feared the man beneath the crown. What frightened her was losing herself inside the palace. Jaffar promised she would never face that world alone. When Leya shared this with Adanna, she expected happiness. Instead, Adanna bitterly warned that princes often forgot their promises after marriage. Leya noticed the jealousy, but remained silent. Lady Samira soon learned that Jaffar planned to propose when the 40 days ended. She warned Adanna that the Merrick family would soon bow before a farmer's daughter. When Adanna admitted she could not bear it, Lady Samira suggested staging an attack to frighten Leya away from royal life. Adanna refused to let Leya be harmed. Lady Samira promised that the masked men would only frighten her and disappear. Blinded by jealousy, Adanna revealed the road Leya and Jaffar would take after visiting the western farms. The following evening, masked riders surrounded their carriage on a narrow forest road. Royal guards fought back as Jaffar pulled Leya behind a fallen tree. The attack was meant to end without bloodshed, but a frightened horse threw one rider down. In the confusion, another attacker released an arrow. Leya saw it flying toward Jaffar and stepped in front of him. The arrow struck her shoulder. Jaffar caught her as she fell and begged her to keep her eyes open. At the palace, the physician removed the arrow and confirmed that it had missed her heart. Jaffar remained beside her all night until she awakened. When Adanna saw Leya pale beneath the blankets, guilt overwhelmed her. She held her friend's hand and nearly confessed, but Lady Samira entered and silenced her with a warning glance. The attack did not frighten Leya away. Instead, it revealed how deeply she loved Jaffar. She admitted that losing him had terrified her more than the arrow itself. Jaffar promised to find those responsible and asked her to remain at the palace under his protection. Hearing that Leya would now live closer to the prince, Adanna allowed jealousy to bury her guilt. Days later, the two women met beneath their childhood jacaranda tree. Adanna begged Leya to end the courtship and return to her former life. Leya finally asked whether Adanna feared for her safety or simply resented being rejected by Jaffar. Adanna accused Leya of stealing the future she had dreamed about since childhood. Leya reminded her that she had never competed for the prince and had once offered to reject him. But she had now fallen in love with Jaffar and could not sacrifice that love to protect Adanna from disappointment. Adanna declared that if Leya chose the prince, their friendship was over. With tears in her eyes, Leya removed the bracelet Adanna had given her as a child and placed it beneath the jacaranda tree. Then she walked away. As purple petals fell between them, Adanna watched the strongest friendship of her life collapse beneath the weight of a crown she still believed belonged to her. Across the village, Mariam pressed a cold cloth against Leya's swollen cheek. She urged her daughter to tell Jaffar everything, but Leya refused. Adanna was broken, she said, and their friendship was already over. Mariam warned that broken people could still wield knives. At the Merrick estate, Lady Samira found Adanna shaking with rage. In 3 market days, Leya would marry Jaffar and become the future queen. Samira placed a small vial on the table and explained that its poison would bring the prince close to death without killing him, if measured carefully. During the engagement ceremony, Jaffar would drink from the ceremonial cup offered by Leya. Adanna would poison the wine, then hide a second vial among Leya's belongings. The kingdom would believe Leya had poisoned Jaffar to stop his investigation into Qasim's attack. Once Leya was executed, Adanna would remain beside the prince and comfort him when he awakened. Adanna feared the poison might kill Jaffar, but Lady Samira reminded her that the crown depended upon her courage. Remembering Jaffar holding Leya before the royal court, Adanna took the vial and promised to pour it herself. On the engagement morning, the palace courtyard was covered with white flowers, golden cloth, and hanging lamps. Inside her chamber, Leya wore a white and gold gown, while Mariam adjusted the fabric around her healing shoulder. Though happiness surrounded her, Leya admitted that she wished Adanna were there. A knock sounded at the door. Adanna entered, carrying the bracelet Leya had returned beneath the jacaranda tree. Mariam tried to send her away, but Adanna tearfully claimed that jealousy had made her cruel. She admitted protecting her family after Qasim's attack, and begged Leya to believe that she was finally happy for her. Leya remembered the river, their flower crowns, and every secret they had shared as children. Against Mariam's warning, she embraced Adanna and asked her to remain. Over Leya's shoulder, Adanna's tearful expression turned cold. Mariam saw it, but only for a moment. Adanna arranged Leya's hair, selected her jewelry, and fastened the royal necklace around her neck. Hidden inside the sleeve of her deep red gown was the poison. When Mariam left to join Beko, Adanna approached the ceremonial table. She poured half the poison into the golden cup, then hid the empty vial beneath Leya's folded clothes and covered it with a silk scarf. Royal drums announced the ceremony. Jaffar waited beneath a golden canopy beside King Idris and Queen Zafira. Lady Samira watched among the nobles as Leya entered to the cheers of the kingdom. Adanna followed, carrying the poisoned cup like a loyal friend offering her blessing. Leya and Jaffar exchanged bracelets. Then the priest called for the cup of trust. As Adanna handed it to Leya, she whispered, "Be happy." Leya smiled and thanked the woman she still called her sister. She filled the cup with ceremonial wine and offered it to Jaffar, promising never to deceive him. Jaffar accepted it with complete trust and drank. For several seconds nothing happened. Then his breathing changed, the cup slipped from his hand, and he collapsed into Leya's arms. The courtyard erupted into screams. The royal physician examined Jaffar and announced that he had been poisoned. Queen Zafira ordered the guards to seize Leya and search her chamber. Moments later, a guard returned with the empty vial wrapped inside Leya's silk scarf. Leya cried that she had never seen it before, but Queen Zafira ordered her arrest. As the guards dragged her away, Leya begged Adanna to tell the truth. Adanna had been inside the chamber. She knew Leya would never harm Jaffar. Adanna looked at her with tears in her eyes. Then she lowered her head and held the unconscious prince's hand. In that moment, Leya understood. Adanna had not returned to bless her engagement. She had returned to bury her. Prince Jaffar was carried into the royal healing chamber, barely breathing. Adanna followed closely, ordering servants to bring cold water and dismissing anyone who moved too slowly. She washed his face, held his hand, and begged him not to leave her. To everyone watching, she appeared devoted, but beneath her tears was one desperate thought. Jaffar must survive long enough for Leya to die. Elsewhere, guards dragged Leya before the royal family. Her white and gold engagement gown was torn, yet Jaffar's bracelet remained around her wrist. Queen Zafira placed the empty vial on a table and demanded an explanation. Leya insisted she had never seen it before. The queen reminded her that she had offered Jaffar the poisoned cup, but Leya argued that it was part of the sacred ceremony. Why would she poison the man she loved after nearly dying to protect him? Lady Samira stepped forward with a carefully prepared lie. She revealed that Qasim had worked on the Merrick estate, then claimed Leya had secretly hired him to arrange the forest ambush. According to Samira, Leya had stepped in front of the arrow only to appear heroic and win the prince's love. Whispers swept through the court. Leya protested that Qasim had tried to kill her, but Lady Samira twisted every fact against her. She claimed Leya had poisoned Jaffar because his investigation into the ambush was bringing him too close to the truth. Then Adanna entered, carrying a cloth stained with blood from Jaffar's lips. Leya turned to the woman she had once called her sister and begged her to tell the truth. Adanna knew Qasim had worked for her family. She had been inside Leya's chamber and had touched the ceremonial cup. For one brief moment, Adanna could have ended the conspiracy. Instead, she strengthened it. Adanna falsely claimed that she had once seen Leya speaking privately with Qasim near the Merrick stables. She said Leya had questioned him about the roads Prince Jaffar travelled. Leya stared at her in disbelief. The apology, the embrace, and the blessing had all been part of the trap. Adanna had not merely hidden the truth, she had carefully prepared every step leading Leya toward the dungeon. King Idris ordered that the accusation be tried at sunrise. Until then, Leya would remain imprisoned. Mariam and Bako rushed into the hall, demanding that the palace search Adanna's room and the entire Merrick estate. Mariam accused Adanna of returning only because hatred had consumed her. Adanna moved close and coldly whispered that Leya should have remained where she belonged. Mariam tried to strike her, but the guards pulled her back. As Leya was dragged away, her parents cried out her name. She did not struggle. She only looked at Adanna, finally understanding that the girl who once promised to protect her now wanted her dead. Inside the healing chamber, Jaffar's condition continued to worsen. Adanna returned to his bedside and held his hand, imagining that when he awakened, she would be the woman he found beside him. Lady Samira entered quietly and said the trial would begin at sunrise. If Queen Zafira had her way, Leya would be executed before the next market day. Adanna asked what would happen if Jaffar awakened before then. "Make certain she dies," her mother replied. Near midnight, Jaffar's fingers finally moved. His eyes opened slightly, and Adanna leaned over him, smiling through her tears. She assured him that he was safe and that she was there. His lips moved weakly. Adanna lowered her ear, expecting him to call her name. "Leya," he breathed. Adanna's smile vanished. Far below the palace, Leya sat alone against the cold dungeon wall. Then the execution bell rang once across Asmar. At sunrise, she would be tried for attempting to murder the man she loved. At sunrise, the hall filled with nobles, guards, and villagers. Leya was brought before the royal court in her torn engagement gown, her wrists bound after a sleepless night. Every piece of evidence appeared to condemn her. The poisoned cup had passed from Leya's hands to Jaffar's. The empty vial had been found among her clothes. Lady Samira claimed she had secretly employed Qasim, while Adanna repeated the lie that Leya had questioned him about the prince's travelling routes. Mariam demanded that Jaffar be brought before the court. If he could speak, he should hear Leya's defense himself. Queen Zafira refused, declaring that her son was too weak to face the woman who had tried to murder him. Leya looked toward Adanna one final time. She reminded her of the river, the jacaranda tree, and their promise never to let the other stand alone. Adanna's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to withdraw her testimony. When King Idris invited Leya to speak, she told the court that she loved Jaffar. She had stepped in front of an arrow to save him and would never poison him. Someone had entered her chamber, planted the vial, and turned the sacred cup of trust into a weapon. Queen Zafira dismissed her defense as desperate lies. With Jaffar unable to testify, Leya was declared guilty of attempting to murder Asmar's heir. The sentence was death before sunset. Mariam collapsed against Bako as guards took their daughter away. King Idris appeared troubled by the rushed judgment, but Queen Zafira insisted that the kingdom could show no mercy to an enemy of the royal bloodline. Hours later, Queen Zafira entered Leya's cell with Lady Samira and Adanna. After dismissing the guards, they offered her one final bargain. If Leya confessed to arranging Qasim's attack and poisoning Jaffar, her parents would be spared. Mariam and Bako would lose their home and be exiled from Asmar, but they would live. Leya understood. They did not merely want her death. They wanted her confession to make their lies permanent. Adanna urged her to accept, claiming that resistance would endanger her parents. Leya asked whether any part of the girl she had once loved remained beneath the jealousy. Adanna could not answer. Leya rose despite the chains around her wrists and faced all three women without fear. "You may kill me, she said, "but I will not give your lies my voice." Queen Zafira warned that pride would be the final thing she gave her parents. Then the three women left as the execution drums began outside. By sunset, thousands had gathered at the palace execution ground. Mariam and Bako were restrained behind the guards, while King Idris sat beside Queen Zafira beneath the royal canopy. Lady Samira stood among the nobles. Adanna remained near the platform, unable to look directly at Leya. The royal herald announced that Leya, daughter of Mariam and Bako, had been found guilty of conspiring with Qasim and attempting to murder Prince Jaffar. Asked for her final words, Leya faced the kingdom. "I am innocent." She requested permission to speak to Jaffar before she died. Queen Zafira refused, claiming the prince was still fighting for his life. Leya stared directly at her. "Or perhaps you are afraid of what he would say." Unease spread through the crowd. King Idris turned sharply toward the queen, but she ordered the execution to continue. The executioner stepped forward. Mariam screamed. Bako fought against the guards. Adanna trembled as the blade was raised, finally seeing there would be no way to undo what she had begun. Then a powerful voice thundered across the execution ground. "Stop!" Every head turned toward the palace steps. Prince Jaffar stood there alive, dressed in black and gold, with the royal physician and armed guards beside him. He looked at Leya, then at the three women who had conspired to kill her. "The woman before you is innocent," he declared, "and today the true traitors will answer for what they have done." At sunrise, the hall filled with nobles, guards and villagers. Leya was brought before the royal court in her torn engagement gown, her wrists bound after a sleepless night. Every piece of evidence appeared to condemn her. The poisoned cup had passed from Leya's hands to Jaffar's. The empty vial had been found among her clothes. Lady Samira claimed she had secretly employed Qasim, while Adanna repeated the lie that Leya had questioned him about the prince's travelling routes. Mariam demanded that Jaffar be brought before the court. If he could speak, he should hear Leya's defense himself. Queen Zafira refused, declaring that her son was too weak to face the woman who had tried to murder him. Leya looked toward Adanna one final time. She reminded her of the river, the jacaranda tree, and their promise never to let the other stand alone. Adanna's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to withdraw her testimony. When King Idris invited Leya to speak, she told the court that she loved Jaffar. She had stepped in front of an arrow to save him and would never poison him. Someone had entered her chamber, planted the vial, and turned the sacred cup of trust into a weapon. Queen Zafira dismissed her defense as desperate lies. With Jaffar unable to testify, Leya was declared guilty of attempting to murder Asmar's heir. The sentence was death before sunset. Mariam collapsed against Bako as guards took their daughter away. King Idris appeared troubled by the rushed judgment, but Queen Zafira insisted that the kingdom could show no mercy to an enemy of the royal bloodline. Hours later, Queen Zafira entered Leya's cell with Lady Samira and Adanna. After dismissing the guards, they offered her one final bargain. If Leya confessed to arranging Qasim's attack and poisoning Jaffar, her parents would be spared. Mariam and Bako would lose their home and be exiled from Asmar, but they would live. Leya understood. They did not merely want her death. They wanted her confession to make their lies permanent. Adanna urged her to accept, claiming that resistance would endanger her parents. Leya asked whether any part of the girl she had once loved remained beneath the jealousy. Adanna could not answer. Leya rose despite the chains around her wrists and faced all three women without fear. "You may kill me," she said, "but I will not give your lies my voice." Queen Zafira warned that pride would be the final thing she gave her parents. Then the three women left as the execution drums began outside. By sunset, thousands had gathered at the palace execution ground. Mariam and Bako were restrained behind the guards, while King Idris sat beside Queen Zafira beneath the royal canopy. Lady Samira stood among the nobles. Adanna remained near the platform, unable to look directly at Leya. The royal herald announced that Leya, daughter of Mariam and Bako, had been found guilty of conspiring with Qasim and attempting to murder Prince Jaffar. Asked for her final words, Leya faced the kingdom. "I am innocent." She requested permission to speak to Jaffar before she died. Queen Zafira refused, claiming the prince was still fighting for his life. Leya stared directly at her. "Or perhaps you are afraid of what he would say." Unease spread through the crowd. King Idris turned sharply toward the queen, but she ordered the execution to continue. The executioner stepped forward. Mariam screamed. Bako fought against the guards. Adanna trembled as the blade was raised, finally seeing there would be no way to undo what she had begun. Then a powerful voice thundered across the execution ground. "Stop!" Every head turned toward the palace steps. Prince Jaffar stood there alive, dressed in black and gold, with the royal physician and armed guards beside him. He looked at Leya, then at the 3 women who had conspired to kill her. "The woman before you is innocent," he declared, "and today the true traitors will answer for what they have done."